Hello and welcome to another edition of the Moving Iron Podcast. This podcast is proudly provided by Axon, helping dealers move more iron for almost 100 years. Find out more at axontire.com. Axon was started almost 100 years ago out of a passion for keeping agriculture moving. It's that same passion that drives them today. With a vision for a better experience for both farmer and dealer, they set out to create a better way to move more iron. When you partner with Axon, you get immediate access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. Axon carries all major brands and sizes of tires, wheels, and tracks. From custom colors and sizes to fully customized wheels, you can have the solution for virtually any problem today's farmer is trying to solve. To find more or become an Axon dealer, please visit axontire.com.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working hard for you and me. Moving iron, time and time again. Through the years you'll find us here. Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Moving Iron Podcast Markets with Chip Nellinger. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is proudly provided by Axon, helping dealers move more iron for the last 100 years. Find out more at axontire.com. And TractorZoom, delivering insights. If you're looking for a great place to see what's going on in the auction market and also see what auction inventories look like, TractorZoom's Iron Comps is a great place to find that. If you're a dealer or a farmer that's looking to have that service at their fingertips when they're looking at buying and selling equipment, go to at checkout, use Moving Iron, and you'll get yourself a nice little discount. Chip is with Blue Reef Agmarketing out of Morton, Illinois, and Chip is nice enough to come on once a week to sit down and talk about what's going on in the markets. And Chip, man, we've had, since we talked last, we had a bit of a cold spell come through, and to say the least. And
I think that's an understatement.
But there's been a lot of things that came out of that, not just here in the States, but also in the Black Sea region. So let's talk about wheat for a little bit and see what that looks like. So we had this historic, unprecedented cold snap that it was unprecedented because of the depth and reach of the cold snap, not so much that it was cold. If you live in Minnesota, this is nothing out of the ordinary, but if you live in Texas, it sure is something out of the ordinary. So I guess as you take a look what's going on in the wheat belt and in the wheat market and the areas that are growing wheat and the stuff that's going on there, wheat might have a little bit of trouble come spring if this winter kill is as bad as we think it might be.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part of this. Well, there's many, like you mentioned, there's many ramifications of this cold temperatures, right? And you know, you're talking sub-zero temperatures deep into Texas, right? So, you know, you get further north there in the main part of the wheat belt, and it's pretty extreme. And there was some snow cover in some areas, but that's what the wheat market now is, going to grapple with until spring. And, how much damage was done, how we're going to come out of dormancy. Was there any winter kill? There's going to be big questions in the market's mind now. And they probably won't be answered, this week or next week. It's going to take a while to figure that out. Wheat market responding higher, as you would expect it to in the overnight here. We had a long weekend with no markets for President's Day. So last night, Monday night, was the first time that we, the markets were open on the grain side anyway since Friday. So a lot to digest there with this weather. It seemed like forecasters knew it was going to be cold, but the magnitude of the cold and some of the amounts of snow seemed like it was a little bit of a shock to the system and a surprise even to a lot of forecasters. And so that's going to be something that's in the wheat market's mind now. I think the bottom side, the downside was limited in wheat anyway, and this will go a long way towards making sure that we don't likely go a whole lot lower. It doesn't mean we're going to go screaming higher, but the downside is probably limited until we know more winter kill. There's some early estimates, and that's all they are, is just a total dart throw shot in the dark. But that there could be 15 to 30% of the wheat in Oklahoma and Kansas and that Texas Panhandle area could have some type of winter kill and yield reductions. But again, that's just an early estimate that I have seen, and but that's kind of what the market's going to be expecting here. You throw that on top of this export tax ban, whatever they've got going on in Russia, and I'm not sure anyone knows. I'm not sure they even know yet. It's one thing one day, one thing the next. It's a tax, it's a ban, it's temporary, it's permanent. I'm not sure what is going on in Russia, but something is, and that's likely again not going to be negative to wheat prices going forward. And who knows when we're going to know what the details are with what they've got going on. I think that a lot of it is known that there's some sort of tax implementation going on. 70 euros per ton, it looks like, was some of the initial talk, and then it was 70% of anything over $200 a ton. And by the end of this week, it might be 9 different things, but something is going on there as far as a tax situation to limit exports out of Russia, at least temporarily, and that's typically not a negative development for prices.
Just the depth of the storm that came through, and I'm sure everyone listening to this has seen this already, but when you're having multicolor pileups in El Paso, Texas, because of snow and ice, and they're closing down I-10, and I-10 runs along, from Texas, that runs basically from El Paso over to Houston. That's kind of how it runs across the southern kind of tip of Texas, and then runs across the Gulf of Mexico and right along there. But they were closing down I-10, and the depth of this storm and the power of this storm, I think, was way more than what, like you said, it was way more than what weather forecasters had anticipated. And it was, I think this come this spring, we're going to see more than just some wheat damage here. 2 years ago in 19, when we had those 2 polar vortexes in March, I think, or whenever it was, 3 months later to what we saw with cattle health, with pneumonias and different kinds of respiratory disease that come out of that. So, I guess as you take a look at these kind of things and these kind of storms in your professional career doing what you've been doing, what are some of the reactions that you see come out of these kind of storms, other than just like the typical winter kill talk and those kind of things? Yeah,
I think the livestock side of it can't be understated either. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think the other thing that's kind of readily apparent out of this is the energy side, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Green energy, great, a lot of windmill capacity in Texas, but the beginning of this storm, it was ice,
right? And
shut down a lot of the electricity generating capacity or potential that they have there, because they couldn't run the windmills because of the ice. The ice also messes with natural gas production. You have whole large energy oil companies talking about and shutting down refinery capacity because of the cold weather. It was sub-zero wind chill in Houston, Texas. Just you think about that for a minute. Houston, Texas, sub-zero wind chills. Mind-boggling how cold and how far south that went. So the whole energy sector, you're talking about rolling blackouts in Texas. Does that kind of eventually make its way to the ethanol side with increased ethanol usage as we try to get by and get through this kind of energy crunch type situation that's going on? That's a possibility. This thing is just crazy. There's probably some things that we haven't even thought of right now, but it's hopefully a once in a generation type situation that we're having here, and can get through this without a whole lot of human suffering. When it's that cold and you have rolling blackouts, even if it's for a half hour, 45 minutes, it's not a good situation. So a lot of effects of this storm from the energy side, from the wheat side of the equation. The livestock side is yet to be seen. They've been battling that for a while in some of these areas, right? That wasn't just a 2 or 3 day deal. This cold temperature and snow and blizzard conditions, we were kind of 2.5 weeks running on some of this stuff. So the cattle side of this, I'm not sure the market's really kind of got through it without, a huge effect yet. But I'm not so sure that you won't eventually see, beef production, messed up a little bit because of these cold and blizzard-like conditions in some areas of the plains over the last couple of weeks.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how everything shakes out, and there could be some upsides and some downsides to this whole thing too. But you won't know any of that for a couple months, so it'll be a slow grind till we get to where we need to go here. So let's jump down and talk about what's going on in Brazil. They're harvesting now, pretty well into it. I think Brazil's soybean harvest was at 9% as of the 11th. So they're still getting started up, but they're way behind from where they should be, which I kind of take that with a grain of salt, because the first good day they get, they'll make that other 10% up pretty fast. But I guess as you take a look at what's going on down there with the kind of the flip in the weather, where it went from being a fairly dry climate, a fairly dry growing season, to now we're looking at some pretty wet areas of soybean country in Brazil, and trying to get corn planted and harvest and everything else going on. What are your reactions to what's going on in Brazil and Argentina?
Yeah, the market's obviously watching that very, very closely. A lot of implications there, right? Number one, too wet late, right? You struggle with dry weather the whole season, and Murphy's Law says, okay, now we finally need it to be dry. At the end of the growing season where we can harvest, you start getting too much rain. So frustrating for those producers there, obviously. But you are also, where it's wet is a big area of second crop corn, and so obviously the harvest being delayed there pushes that second crop corn planting back a little bit. They have a pretty narrow window for that crop anyway, and they need to get that crop in the ground in a timely manner, or they risk getting pushed into a real dry part of their year with that last part of the production on that second crop corn. So that's maybe one of the bigger implications. They'll get the beans out, like you said, and they'll catch back up, but are they going to be able to get that second crop corn in on a timely manner? And right now, you could argue it's behind. And then in Argentina, it's kind of like we were here, is what I'm kind of trying to sift through the information and pick up a little bit. Kind of like we were here in August. Wasn't like just blistering hot, but man, we couldn't buy a rain. And it seems like that's kind of how the end of the Argentine growing season is coming to pass. Is not really hot, but man, they some of those areas are really, really dry, and I can't help but think that won't affect their yields when it's said and done. They're a little bit behind Brazil normally anyway, as far as their growing season goes. They plant later, they harvest later, so they haven't really started much harvest there. They're kind of in that August, September time frame in a lot of those areas. So we're going to know more of that in a few weeks when Argentina starts harvesting, but it does look like they're finishing out on a real dry note in some of those areas, and hard to believe that won't affect ultimate production there in Argentina, but just don't know that yet until they get into harvest here in a few weeks.
The markets have just really kind of swarmed around that. If you watch what soybeans have done over the last 5 or 6 days, they've climbed up really high, and kind of like we've talked about in the past. There's these big swings in the marketplace, and they're you got to feed the bull every day, like you said a million times on here. And I guess as you take a look at what's going on, when's that next correction going to come, and what's that look like? And I guess as you look at the market, Chip, what are some of the drivers you think that are going to be in place that are going to say, hey, this is when we're going to see that next big dip? Are they going to have to catch up and get in Brazil to kind of calm that market down a little bit? Or is it, what's that line in the sand there for the market, I guess, when you start looking at the upward trends we're seeing?
I think it is going to boil down to what the USDA said on this February crop report a week ago. And that is, at 120 million bushel carryout on beans, there's no margin for error. You think about that, and that's likely going to go a little bit lower from where it is currently at 120. But, whatever the number you say, 100, 90, 110, whatever that number is, you spread that across the entire Midwest, from the plains through the Corn Belt, 120-ish million bushels of beans left in this country at the end of this growing season right ahead of harvest. That's not many bushels to go around. That's what's going to be the underlying theme of this market. The bean market, you look at it on a chart, you're like, we're just kind of going sideways here. But then you look at the scale of it, we're slopping around in essentially $1 range here for the last 3 or 4 weeks, making 50, 60-cent swings, back and forth, just kind of chopping sideways. And I think that tight stock situation, tightest ending stocks to use ratio that we've ever seen domestically, means that the breaks might be severe and violent, but they probably won't last very long until we get closer to harvest and know we've got a crop coming. And that puts the bar maybe unrealistically high as far as new crop production goes. So that's going to be the next item. This market has to make sure we're going to get the acres planted. And there's a lot of competition between crops now. Beans are just one, of the crop mix. Cotton has had a huge rally. It's in the mix in the South. Obviously, corn has strong demand. So this acreage mix, we're going to be battling out the next few months is really going to be interesting on how that shapes out. I just think that you're in for a pretty volatile ride going forward. We've talked about that a lot. You're seeing that, but I don't think this tight stock situation and the uncertainty in South America and the world right now. I think the only way you can cut that is that we're going to continue to see massive swings. I would, being a betting man that I am, I would bet that you haven't seen the highs yet in beans. But do we have to wait till June, July, August to see new highs and maybe challenge $15 or higher? It might be down the road, but I would bet that you haven't seen the highs. It's just how are we gonna get from where we're at currently to those new highs might really cause a lot of indigestion and heartburn on this thing. So I think you're going to continue to see what we have seen, and that's big swings. Just case in point of the overnight, right? At one point you had beans up over 20 cents last night. They're up 9 right now. Corn's up 2 1/4. It was up almost 15 cents at one point. It's just going to be par for the course. Might go lower, 6 or 8 cents lower on the day, and close 10 or 12 higher. We're going to see days like that. But I think that the tightness of stocks and the sheer size of demand means that any breaks are going to be probably temporary and uncover a lot of buying interest until we are really sure that we've got a big crop coming on big acres here this coming summer and fall.
Been a lot of momentum in the hog market here of late. Kind of look what you see happen last week. They had new contract highs and across the board, even in cutouts and everything else. So I guess as you take a look at what's going on in the hog market, it seems like there's some pretty good momentum in the hog market right now.
It really does. And that came out of nowhere too, right? It's kind of like the storm right. and the blizzard, and like, okay, we knew demand was going to be good, and we had some production issues, from a year ago, the whole COVID shutdown of a year ago. We know those were out there, but we weren't quite sure when they're going to show up. Well, they showed up with a vengeance, and they're here right now. And, I think there's a lot of things going on. Number one, a lot of pent up demand, starting to see that. China says that they're, 90+% back to their, their numbers pre African swine flu. I think that's probably a little bit suspect given the demand and the imports of U.S. Pork that they're taking. So a lot going into it, but bottom line is huge rally we've seen recently in the hogs. There's a lot of news flown around in the Twitter sphere, so you can only believe that, as far as you can throw it in some cases, but a lot of talk that there's a lot of empty hog barns out there, more so than normal, right? There's always hog barns with, cleaning and some of the maintenance stuff they have to do. But it appears that out in the, Iowa, Minnesota area, that there's a lot more empty hog barns than normal. Arguably there's other, multitude of reasons for that. But point being, production lower, demand higher. It's kind of what you're seeing here on the grain side too. And that's a powerful combination for sharply higher prices. You're starting to see that, some of these summer months. Yeah, the June, over 92 at the end of last week. So arguably there's some more room for upside, especially on these summer months. You're going to see, the magic 100 level exceeded. I would guess that you would on the July and August hogs at some point. You're not even into the main part. Seasonally, you get into the summer months, and that's when things get really, really tight as far as the production and that normal summer seasonal of lower production. If this demand stays like where it looks like it is right now, or increases going into spring and summer, it can be very explosive for summer month hogs, and might not have even seen the anything close to what we're going to see. That doesn't mean you're going to go straight up, though. I think livestock markets, cattle and hogs, both are going to start taking on a more of a volatile tone like the grain markets have, and get really, really choppy and large whipsaws going forward. But look at a chart right now, and boy, these hogs, they made up a lot of room in a hurry and look like they've got more to go on the summer months here before it's said and done.
They're definitely headed in a very upward direction, especially, like you said, moving into what we see out there. So, and, a lot of these exports that we're seeing right now, looks like Egypt hiked its soybeans imports, relying heavily on the U.S. on getting soybeans from us, and what we see with China and those kind of places where there, a lot of hog exports and those kind of things are going to. The U.S. dollar, it's where it's at right now, is making it very attractive for the world to come buy U.S. ag commodities, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and you throw into all that, right? I mean, that's fundamentally production lower, demand higher, but then you throw that dollar in there, and some of the stimulus that we're putting into the economy, not just here but across the world, and you kind of spark the flames of inflation on top of what's already a bullish situation, on some of these commodities, and this thing could get downright stupid before it's said and done. And so that all looks like it's bubbling under the surface. You read more and more of that, talk in financial press and some of these different outlets as far as financial news. Inflation starting to be that hot button. What a lot of those people don't understand already is that, at least on the grain side and livestock side, some of our commodities are already into large bull markets in their own right because of the demand and because of shrinking supplies. And the dollar keeps dropping, this thing's going to really get crazy.
Well, Chip, hey, good information here. If folks want to reach out to you and get more information about what it is that you do at Blue Reef, or just have a plan that they're working on and might need some guidance on how to get that plan started or adjusted, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, best way is just call our office at 309-550-7213. We'd be happy to talk to you. That plan and the execution part of a risk management plan is more critical than ever. And if you need just an extra set of eyes and ears, just reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you.
Well, I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Make sure you check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's where you're going to find the latest editions of the Moving Iron Podcast when they get posted. Also, any blogs that I have posted will show up there as well. Go over to MovingIronLLC.com, and you can get all the information about the Moving Iron Podcast and the blogs that I post as well there. But also check out the Moving Iron Summit that's coming up in Nashville, Tennessee, September 15th through the 17th. All the information that you need to find about the summit will be there. Room reservations, registering for the meeting, the agenda, the speakers, all the stuff that you need to find is right there. So check that out. If you're a dealer of any kind, check that out. And I'd love to see you guys in Nashville this fall. Check out the Dryline Farmer Podcast. Brent and Landon will keep you laughing throughout the day, and they're pretty entertaining with what they do. So with that, I am Casey Seymour with Chip Nellinger. Let's go with some iron, folks. Out. You want to have a meaningful competitive advantage to help sell more equipment. Whether you represent the sales, parts, or management department of an implement dealership, there's a surprising amount of complexity when it comes to tire, wheel, and track technology. Let Axon worry about that so you can get back to supporting your customers. Axon has leveraged years of experience to create a streamlined process that gives you a proven path to help today's grower and sell more equipment. The roots of their organization go back almost 100 years to the invention of the rubber tractor tire. Supporting agriculture is the number one driver of Axon, from product development through sales and service. To find more or become an Axon dealer, head over to axontire.com.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hard-working people working and time again. Through the years you'll find us here